Hi, this is Jürgen Rasmussen. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis vlog. This episode is about how to help clients who display what's often labeled OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder. These clients are usually lost in rumination, lost in compulsive thoughts. And there's quite a few things that you can do to help these people. First of all, I'd be very reluctant to accept the whole mental illness frame, the whole idea that there's something wrong with these people or that they have some sort of disease. There's no evidence that they actually do. So don't view it as an illness and don't frame what you do as a treatment. That just makes everything way more harder than it needs to be. I tend to view this as a habit. And my frame with clients is that it's not the thoughts and the feelings in and of themselves that are problematic. It's the relationship to their own inner experience. So I view our job as helping people change their relationship to the thoughts that occur. So one thing that you can do with people who are lost in thought is, and this is a nice analogy, I very often ask these folks, look, if you were overwhelmed at work with some sort of big project or task, what would you do outside of delegating it? And the obvious answer for most people is, well, I try to break it down into smaller chunks, smaller goals, because if you break it down enough, it becomes manageable and it's no longer overwhelming. Same goes with your own internal experience. If you can break your own internal experience down into smaller pieces, it suddenly becomes way less overwhelming and way more manageable. So one very nice meditation technique to guide people through is to have them orient their attention towards thinking activity and doing their best to notice whether what appears are images, as in mental images, or some form of talk, words, sentences, monologues, discussion, or whether it's a combination of images and talk, or perhaps they can't quite discern whether it's images or talk, but there's some sort of thinking activity going on, so you just have them label it as thoughts. So they may sit there with their eyes closed with the instruction to just enjoy the silence for as long as it lasts. And then every time something appears, to say out loud image or talk or thought or image and talk. And in my experience, instead of thinking becoming this overwhelming barrage that they're lost in, just helping them create the distinction between images and talk kind of chunks it down and makes it more manageable. And they get the opportunity to discover that whenever they see an image, like notice, oh, that's an image, or they hear, that's internal dialogue, that's talk. At the moment of noticing that and knowing that, it has a tendency to lose its power. The chain of rumination has a tendency to stop because there's no point in trying to solve a thought. It's only when we're lost in thought that we try to solve our then subsequent thoughts as if they're problems to be solved. So helping them have that experience of seeing that the moment they see a thought as a thought, an image as an image, internal dialogue as talk, at that moment it has a tendency to dissolve or lose its power. And to task them with practicing that throughout the day, and also to practice it when they notice that they get lost in thought, that they kind of, practice noticing and labeling and naming. Now, this can be challenging for some, so for some people, they may say, I can't make any distinctions. I can't notice whether they're images or talk. It's just this barrage of, okay, in that case, you can help them find one variable, for example, speed, the frequency in which the barrage is happening. And then you might give them the task that every time it seems as if the frequency increases, they say increase. And every time the frequency seems to decrease, they say the word decrease. And just giving them a simple tool like that helps them make distinctions, helps them make it a bit more manageable, helps them to begin to make more distinctions about their own experience. So this is one thing that's very, very useful to do. Something else that I really prefer is people who are lost in rumination often don't have much access to their feelings. They're stuck in thinking, right? They don't have access to their feelings. So I try to get them back to feeling, try to get them back to their bodies, back to, might be breathing, might be the sensations of their hands. If they're really dissociated, I might, so one thing I very often do is I have them put their hand on a table, and then I ask them to describe what they feel. And most of them will say, well, I feel a table, and I feel my hand on the table. And I say to them, those aren't feelings. Those are concepts. You don't feel a table. You don't feel a hand. You don't feel my hand. These are all concepts. Use words that refer to felt experience. So I might guide them to then realize that what they might be feeling is hardness or pulsation or trembling or contraction or expanding or warmth or tingling. These are actual experiences. And I have them practice describing their experience instead of evaluating and creating stories and abstracting about their experience. This has a tendency to reduce thinking activity, to reduce rumination. So teaching them to describe their experience, to connect their language to felt experience. If they can't quite do that, I might get them doing stuff, might be doing push-ups, might be sprinting at place, something to get their system activated so that they can feel some, dryness, some warmth, some pulsation, and really get in touch with that. And very often that, getting in touch with their bodies again, opens the door for them to get more in touch with emotion again. Because back in the days of the Enlightenment, there was this idea that you have reason on one hand, and then you have emotion on one hand, and emotion gets in the way. But what we know today, based upon the people who have studied people with strokes, is that you need to be able to feel deeply to think clearly. People who can't feel very often get stuck in anxiety, rumination, overthinking. Because to be able to make a decision, you have to be able to be in touch with a feeling that lets you know, I like that, I want that, no, don't like that. If you don't have access to that, the thinking process is just going to keep spinning. So a lot of this is to help them connect back to feeling. And many of them are scared of emotion and scared of feeling. And this is also a skill. And, sometimes for these people to feel again is overwhelming. So you need to help them to connect with emotion again and to kind of chunk down their emotional experience so that it's less threatening for them, and to help them to make distinctions between raw sensory experience, emotions, and stories. That makes your inner experience way more easy to deal with. Very often, what's called exposure therapy can be very useful with these folks, dragging them out into the contexts where perhaps they do their compulsions or have all these thoughts, and helping them to stay with the experience and connect with what they're feeling, and acting despite their thinking, and kind of noticing that they can do that the thoughts don't come with inherent commands that tells them that they have to do a particular thing. It's just a suggestion. Now, very often when people think of exposure therapy, they think of it as, I'm going to expose myself to the threat out there, so to speak. But with the psychological illusion model that I teach, that's not what we do. I'm helping them to expose themselves to their own internal experience and to see if there's actually any threat in what they're experiencing. So this is important as well. I always try to bring people back into contact with experience. Very often people say direct experience. There really is no such thing as direct experience, but we should say closer to direct experience. Now here's something to consider. Thought is never now. Thought is never now. Almost all of your thinking is self-referential thinking. And all the self-referential thinking seems to refer to a projected future or a reconstructed past, which per definition is not occurring at the moment that you're thinking it, right? So if a thought, so I had a client just yesterday from Florida who had these fantasies about becoming homeless, right? But the point is that at the moment of thinking it, it's not happening, At the moment that he has the what if I go bankrupt, or what if I end up homeless, or what if that happens, at the moment of thinking it, you're not actually experiencing it. You're never experiencing that which you're thinking about at that particular moment. So it's always non-events. And trying to solve non-events as if they're events is very much what keeps the rumination going. So I always try to get them back into direct experience. So just the other day, I worked with a guy who's claustrophobic, right? And he had his first, call it attack, in a car wash. And it's also been a problem at planes. And at one moment during the conversation, he says, I don't get this stuff you're saying about thinking, because I'm stuck in the plane. That's what I'm experiencing. So I'm saying, are you experiencing being stuck in the plane? Well, yeah, I'm stuck in the plane. But the thing is, if you talk to most people on a plane and you ask them, what are you experiencing? They're not saying I'm stuck in a plane. They might just say, I'm in a plane, right? So stuck in a plane is a perception. It's a thought. Now, well, he said, yeah, but I can't leave the plane whenever I want to. I said, that's true. And there's a couple of hundred people perhaps on the plane, and they're all in different emotional states. They're bored, they're sleeping, they're flirting with the flight attendant, they're irritable, they're bored, they're curious, they're anxious, right? So that has to mean that the mere fact that no one can leave the plane doesn't mandate a particular experience. And then he said to me, yeah, but I'm stuck on the plane for an hour. That's my experience. So I said to him, is that really your experience? Do you ever experience that? And I said to him, you actually don't. This is not your experience. You never experience being stuck for an hour on a plane. Your actual experience might be more along the lines of the smell of coffee. And at that particular moment of the smell of coffee, the thought, I'm stuck for an hour, is not there. There's just the smell of coffee. And then there might be the thought, ooh, that would be nice. And then you might see the flight attendant and noticing that you really like her legs. And then this sexual fantasy emerges and you kind of get hard. But then you experience, getting pushed because the fat person next to you needs to use the bathroom. And there's a slight irritability at that moment. And then maybe you notice a tension in your back. And then the thought appears, oh, I wish these seats were bigger. And then maybe the thought appears, Jesus, I'm stuck here for an hour. But that thought may appear for a few seconds until the smell of coffee appears again. This is perhaps closer to your actual experience. Now, after the flight, you might then again create the story. I was stuck for an hour. But this is not something that you're actually experiencing. So helping clients get back to actual experience time and time and time again, so that they can notice that whatever they think, they're not actually experiencing. This is a key point. Now, here's two other things to look at. If you meditate on experience, like if you meditate on the thinking process, you'll notice that there's two components to it. There's the object, meaning the image that appears, or the self-talk that appears, or the thought that appears, and then there's the knowing of it. So there's the image and the knowing of it. A bit like when you're hearing, the activity of hearing is that there's the sound and then there's a knowing of it, right? What you want to help people do is to orient their attention towards the knowing element, that non-verbal, open, spacious consciousness or knowing in which the experience appears. To rest as the knowing of it, to bring more attention to the knowing of the experience than that which is experienced. Because as you do that, the knowing element becomes stronger. And what you want to, these people are identified with their thoughts. It seems as if they are their thoughts, right? So what you can help them do is to rest as that which knows the thinking and which remains whenever a thought dissolves. To have them notice time and time and time again, to help them rest as that which remains whenever a thought dissolves. That which knows the thought is the very same consciousness that remains whenever a thought dissolves. So if knowing or consciousness remains every time a thought dissolves, that has to mean that none of the thoughts are essential to who you are, essential to your nature. And it's one thing to kind of just hear that and go, yeah, that's cute, and to kind of know that intellectually. It's something else to practice it and to really have an experience of it, a deep insight of it. Because the more that's seen, the less thinking will bother you. Now here's a final thing. Those of you who have heard about Douglas Harding and the headless way will be aware of this, but for some people this really, really hits home. And that is, have them look at objects and then quickly look back at that which is looking. Meaning, turn attention back on itself. And you can do this in daily life by noticing that you can't see your own face. Like you can see objects, but if you look for that which is looking, from that perspective, there's just open space. And here's kind of the key relevant insight to this. Thoughts are not in your head. Thoughts are in consciousness. They're in open space. They're not actually even in open space. They're an expression of open space. But let's, thoughts are not in your head. They're not in your skull. There's an illusion at play that says that, I am the thinker in my skull, behind my eyes. The thoughts are in here, that's me, looking at a world out there which are objects, which are not me. This makes the thoughts seem very personal, and it makes it seem as if you are those thoughts. But everything you see and hear and notice happens in the space of consciousness. Thoughts happen in the very same space of consciousness. If you really watch experience, you'll notice that you don't feel your head either. You can't feel your head. You can feel sensations. You can feel, there might be a visual image of a head, and there might be a tightness, and then there might be a thought, and it might seem as if the thoughts appear within that head. But if you notice, you'll notice that at the moment of feeling the tightness, the thought isn't there. At the moment of the thought, the feeling of the tightness isn't there. Actually, the sensations that you kind of make a head out of appear in the same open space as the thoughts. And there's a huge liberation in helping someone discover that time and time and time again. So help your clients notice that thoughts are not in your head. They're in open space, just like everything else that appears in the open space of consciousness. So I hope this video was thought-provoking, useful, inspiring. If my thinking resonates with you and you're looking to make changes in your life, you want to do change work with me, you can reach me at provocativhypnosis.com. If you're looking for mentoring to become more effective with your clients, you can of course also reach me at provocativhypnosis.com. Till next time.